Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 279. Without any delay, start explanation. The 9-round platform suddenly swirled. Beams of heaven and earth spirits lights descended from the skies, forming a conical barrier. Tang Wulin suddenly felt a force pulling at him, and instantly, a strange sensation spread across his body. It made him feel as if he had already become the master of heaven and earth at that moment, as if everything in the world was within his control. His senses spread out boundlessly. His ability to sense the various elements instantly cleared up. The entire mountain range seemed as if it was within his field of vision. He could even sense things further away. He felt like the destiny of the entire Dolor continent was hinging on him. This made his senses become extraordinarily clear. He sensed a wonderful change within himself. The bloated feeling he had had in his body went away entirely. This was because he now felt like he was omnipotent. With support from heaven and earth spirits, he had become pitilessly powerful. The golden dragon spear in his hands was scorching hot right now, and he heard a deafening dragon's roar resounding in his ear. His golden dragon spear seemed to have come alive, glowing like never before. At Tang Wulin's forehead, the mark formed by the life seed had become more visible. Wisps of green light suddenly floated out from Tang Wulin's forehead. The heaven and earth spirits which were infused into his body with the blood god's array suddenly flowed in the opposite direction. Instantly, the entire barrier of light was covered by a green halo. An extremely dense life source instantly spread over the whole array. When they felt the effects of this green halo, the 9 blood gods, from blood 1 to blood 9, had surprised expressions on their faces. This was because they could clearly feel that their own life forces being greatly strengthened. Their exhausted energies were restored. Even more strangely, with the strengthening of this life source, the heaven and earth spirits that had originally been under the guidance of the blood god's great array alone suddenly intensified. It was as if they found their source as they surged forth like a swarm of bees. What was this? Blood One's eyes brightened. He knew that he had made the right choice. Although he was not completely clear what this thing within Tang Wulin's body was, he could guess that it must be something crucial to the entire plane. It was what had devoured the origins of 2 abyssal kings. He must have been channeling the absorbed energy to them to help them utilize the power of the plane. With this, their confidence in fighting against the abyssal plane increased greatly. Beams of bright light lingered in the air. Under them, the Black Monarch's expression was ice cold, with no emotion whatsoever. Before her eyes, Tang Wulin's body was steadily growing. With the infusion of the shadows, his body quickly reached 10 meters in height. The golden dragon spear in his hands enlarged as well. Although he was alone, hovering there with the support of the blood god's great array, he exuded a feeling as if he could fight against 1,000 men single-handedly. The Black Monarch swung her hand. The multitude of abyssal creatures that had frozen in place before this surged up like a swarm of bees and immediately shot up into the skies. Under Zhong Huanyuan's orders, every blood god army soldier commenced their attack again. For a time, various light beams and ammunitions wove a giant web of firepower, sealing the path on which the abyssal creatures were charging out from. Tang Wulin wielded his golden dragon spear and stared downward coldly. As the abyssal creatures died, something unusual occurred. The strands of abyssal energy did not return to the abyssal plane but instead shot toward Tang Wulin. Seemingly in the blink of an eye, they had formed a vortex with the golden dragon spear as the center, and they surged into the divine tool. Extremely powerful energy instantly surged into Tang Wulin's body, making the gold-red glow on his body increase in intensity. Tang Wulin's body enlarged and he struck out with his spear subconsciously. The giant golden dragon once again became the extension of his golden dragon spear, and it suddenly blasted its way into the crowd of abyssal creatures, destroying a huge amount of them. The abyssal creatures turned into abyssal energy and were devoured by it. With the support of heaven and earth spirits, Tang Wulin's endurance was greatly increased. It was as if he had another massive body. The energy that he could not bear would be absorbed by this extra body. The aura around him also grew stronger and stronger. Tang Wulin was completely certain that the energy he could control at this moment could be compared to a limit Dolor. Under the protection of the life seed and the heaven and earth spirits, he did not have to worry about his body being blown to bits. Without a doubt, this situation could not be replicated elsewhere. This was because there were only one such blood god's great array on the entire Doluor continent. With the addition of the life seed's feedback after it absorbed the abyssal plane's plane seed, it had given him the ability to temporarily control such a vast amount of energy. For Tang Wulin, this was undoubtedly something amazing that he had never experienced before. The best part was, with such experiences, it had allowed him to feel the energy changes of experts' ranks. This gave a firm foundation for his future. Under normal circumstances, a soul master's cultivation was done slowly in stages. A soul master could only go the distance by laying down firm foundations one step at a time. It was just like what divine craftsman Zhenhua said to Tang Wulin before: if he was willing to specialize in forging, he could help him swiftly reach the ranks of a titled Doluor through a certain method. However, Tang Wulin had turned down this offer. This was because if he took the shortcut, his fundamentals would not be firm enough. It would be difficult for him to reach higher ranks in the future. Tang Wulin had cultivated for many years. It could be said that he had a strong grasp of the fundamentals. Even as he was absorbing these abyssal planes energies, his foundations were extremely stable because he had the two great cores, the Dragon Core and Soul Core, which he cultivated himself, as his core energy. He did not have the worries of normal soul masters. However, his cultivation base would not experience any extraordinary improvement just by absorbing these energies alone. If that happened, he would still be faced with great trouble. Hence, while Tang Wulin converted these energies through his Dragon Core and Soul Core, he only absorbed a portion of the essence. Also, he mainly used this portion to enhance and strengthen his body, instead of improving his soul power cultivation base. Even so, his soul power was pushed to the peak of 6 rings in a short amount of time. This was done using only surplus energy. Most of the absorbed energy was used to strengthen his body. There was no doubt that this was the cleverest option, as it would lay a good foundation for him to continue breaking through his Golden Dragon King seals in the future. The Golden Dragon King seals were the most important things to Tang Wulin. Not only could they improve his cultivation base, but they were also tied to his very life. How could Tang Wulin not take them seriously? He had absorbed a large amount of energy, and he silently felt the changes in the life seed. He infused these pure energies into the life seed and only retained a very small amount for himself. As expected, although the life seed did not value these pure energies much, it still absorbed all of them. The life seed seemed not to possess intelligence alone, it seemed to possess extraordinary wisdom as well. It had understood Tang Wulin's intentions. The dense life source intensified the gold-red hue on Tang Wulin's body. The bloated sensation he felt also lessened. He fired away relentlessly with his golden dragon spear. He did not have to think about running out of energy. Every blast was like a shot from the most powerful fixed-soul ammunition. It blasted the abyssal creatures under him to bits. Even abyssal creatures of the Black Monarch's rank hesitated to charge upward. He was truly holding back 10,000 enemies alone. With support from the Blood God Army's warriors' high-tech equipment, the situation was completely under control. The 5 abyssal kings dared not charge up to fight him at this point. It was not that the Black Monarch and the others had no confidence in themselves. It was actually because the closer they were to the passage's exit, the greater planar pressure they had to withstand would be. Back then, the predecessors of the Doluor continent had paid a great price for the Blood God's Great Array. In addition to 6,000 years of enhancements, the Blood God's Great Array was always very efficient in utilizing the heaven and earth spirits. Moreover, it had the feedback of life energy from the life seed. This had undoubtedly settled the problem of the Blood God's strength being the sole source of power. The Black Monarch's brows were tightly knit together. She looked at the relentless barrage from the golden dragon spear in midair with keen sparkling eyes. She also shifted her gaze toward Tang Wulin as he devoured the abyssal energies. Although they could still afford to lose these abyssal energies for the time being, it still weakened the abyssal plane's origin energy. Besides, their enemy had already killed 2 abyssal kings. The abyssal passage was not a one-way road, so it was open to invasion. She could feel that this human before her had a body that was not too powerful, or at least, it was not yet at a level that could pose a threat to them. However, the problem was that although this human looked weak, the pace at which he grew was something that no abyssal creature could hope to compare with. Once this human developed into a demigod, with that weapon of his, he could very well bring about the annihilation of the abyss. If nothing else, his presence would make it extremely difficult for the abyssal plane to invade the human's world again. As the Black Monarch's thoughts flashed across her mind, the murderous intent in her eyes was so great that it seemed to have substance. No wonder the Sage King, who had been in a deep slumber as he waited for the abyss to evolve into a divine realm, had awakened and wanted to break through this passage regardless of the price. There truly was a human that could threaten their very existence right now. No matter what, they had to kill the human while he was still in the cradle. When she thought about this, the Black Monarch's eyes shone brighter. However, she did not act rashly. Even when the 4 abyssal kings around her were itching to have a go, she still waited calmly. She was waiting for an opportunity. Judging by the human's blood god's great array, she reckoned that their chances of breaking through forcibly would not be high. The barrage on the plane was too strong. With her strength, she could only guarantee that she herself could walk away from this. If any of the other abyssal kings died again, then the abyss's core would be shaken once more. She believed that an opportunity would arise. That would be the moment where they would wager the success or failure of their entire operation on one single move. Black strands swirled around the Black Monarch's hands and formed a structure that resembled a large net in the air. It kept devouring and absorbing the abyssal energy in the air and infused them into the cracks. The cracks warped as it opened and closed, changing size constantly. When they were pressed upon by Blood God's great array, they would shrink, but when faced with the full impact of the abyssal plane, they would expand. These constant changes intertwined with each other and more abyssal creatures emerged from the cracks. Tang Wulin continued his onslaught of abyssal creatures when 2 more abyssal kings emerged from among the abyssal creatures. Although they were not of monarch rank, they were clearly abyssal experts of note. Blood One managed the great array as he observed the condition of the abyssal plane beneath him. His gaze was like a dried-up well, unmoving with nary a ripple. He was not too concerned at the moment. The Blood God's great array was already in full swing. If the abyssal plane wanted to maintain the cracks, they would have to continue paying a heavy price. Although the abyssal energies would be restored to them, it was not easy for them to convert the recycled energy into combat strength. If this attrition went on, as long as they did not break through the seal in the end, they would certainly suffer a great blow to their numbers. They might not have the ability to initiate another abyssal tide in hundreds of years. With the Blood God's great array receiving input from the life seed, its current condition could not be any better. Tang Wulin was being supported by the great array. Blood One was confident that unless a true deity appeared, nobody could hope to get past him. Tang Wulin was under the Blood God's great array's enhancement. At least, in this location, he was an all-powerful demigod. It was not that he had attained this rank himself. It was because, in the process of his attacks, he had utilized the heaven and earth spirits which gave off an energy shockwave. Even if the most powerful king from the abyssal plane arrived, it might not be able to charge out of the passage. Also, with the existence of the life seed, who would dare to risk their life against Tang Wulin? That was a golden dragon spear that could even devour a plain seed. Hence, when Tang Wulin stood steadily and maintained his bombardment, Blood One knew that there was no way that the Blood God army would lose this war anymore. Even he did not expect Tang Wulin to be able to become a pillar to suppress the abyssal plane when he did not even have a 7-ringed cultivation base. As he looked at Tang Wulin, hovering in midair in his golden armor shining with unparalleled brilliance, he felt guilty for the first time. He regretted using his tactics to hinder Tang Wulin so that his daughter would not get too close to him. He could see that this young man was bearing a burden that was extraordinarily heavy for one so young, but he also had great potential and strength that was way beyond his age. As a high-ranking official in the army, of course, he understood what the Blood God's great array was. He was surprised that he could maintain the entire great array at such a level using Tang Wulin's strength alone. This meant that as long as he was here, it would be almost impossible for the abyssal plane to charge out of the passage. Without a doubt, after this battle, Tang Wulin would be extremely renowned in the army. His prestige might even surpass Zhong Huanyun when he was at the same age. After all, although Zhong Huanyun was heavily gifted with natural talents, he did not have the ability to guard the abyssal passage all on his own. As long as Tang Wulin agreed, there was no doubt that the bright mirror Dolor Zhong Huanyun would undoubtedly leave the post of the Blood God Army's commanding officer to him. This was because there was no one that was more suitable than him. He would definitely have the support of the entire army. Unfortunately, it was too late for him to regret that now, but this young man did not seem to hold a grudge, luckily. When he thought about this, his gaze could not help but search for his daughter among the masses. He found Long Yuxue quickly enough. As the Secret Service's chief, Long Yuxue's duty on the battlefield was to give support where it was needed the most. She had to be ever ready to support the front lines with long-range attacks. Although she was constantly on the move, her eyes had never left the golden figure that hovered in the air. "Oh, my dear daughter, what keen eyes you have. I hope that you really get the opportunity." Long Qianwu laughed as if in mockery of himself. From this moment on, he had absolutely no intention of preventing his daughter from pursuing Tang Wulin. He could not help but think with amusement that the Dolor continent was a place where strength was one's greatest virtue. Even if the opponents this young man had to face in the future were extremely powerful, there should not be any problem for him to protect himself given his abilities. Just when Long Qianwu's thoughts and emotions changed, he suddenly knitted his brows tightly. An otherworldly chill had suddenly gripped his heart. This cold had surged within him in the strangest of ways. As an expert of title Dolor rank, his senses were very sharp. This is bad. Something's not right. Long Qianwu turned to the source instinctively as he relied on his senses. There seemed to be no changes on the spot where his gaze fell upon. However, his gaze suddenly fell upon a Blood God Army warrior. This was a warrior in charge of controlling a soul cannon. His movements did not appear strange. However, in Long Qianwu's senses, he clearly felt that this warrior was different from the others. His martial soul was icy snow, and in this terrain which was filled with ice and snow, his senses were more perceptive than experts of the same rank. Due to the slight distraction, he was not focused on the main battlefield. That was why the change appeared to have happened quickly. Long Qianwu did not make a sound. He started approaching the warrior as he silently utilized his body's soul power, trusting his own judgment. However, at that very moment, the warrior seemed to have felt something as well. He suddenly stopped firing from the soul cannon in his hands. He stood up straight, turned around, and looked at Long Qianwu. What Long Qianwu saw was a young face. The face had a faint smile, but that smile appeared completely sinister in Long Qianwu's eyes. This was... In the next instant, the warrior moved. He had instantly turned into a wisp of smoke. He was not the only one. In different directions, 8 other figures moved as well. There were 9 of them in total. They seemed to be pouncing toward the 9 blood gods at the same time. They all moved with extraordinary speed and their bodies were quickly covered in battle armor. They all had 3-word battle armor, and their cultivation base auras also suggested that they were of title Dolor rank. Horrifyingly, dense evil auras burst forth from their bodies. For a time, the Blood God's great array was hit with the evil aura from the outside and despite being stable, was obviously shaken for a bit. Without a doubt, the Blood God's great array was very powerful. It could even be regarded as the most powerful array on the entire Dolor planet. However, it had its own drawbacks as well. This array was only effective against beings from another plane. The planar power formed by heaven and earth spirits would only repel outsiders. It would not have any effect on living beings from the same plane. The 9 figures that had suddenly dashed out just now were not from the abyssal plane, there was no doubt about this. However, they had charged directly at the 9 blood gods who were maintaining the great array without any consideration for their own lives. This change was too sudden. It was so abrupt that nobody had time to react to it. Black Monarch, who had been coldly observing the passage's exit from the depths of the abyss, seized this opportunity and made her move. She led 6 abyssal kings and allegedly charged towards the exit. This was a concerted attack from within and without, impacting their enemies from both sides. Yes, this was the opportunity Black Monarch was waiting for. This was an opportunity created by their partners. The situation that had initially been stabilized suddenly changed. This was something that no one had expected. Even the heartless Doluo Kaudashi never thought that this was possible. He never expected that they would have enemies within their own ranks in such a secluded snow mountain, let alone for there to be such a large number of them. Bright Mirror Doluo Zhong Huanyun was overseeing the entire battlefield. He was the quickest to react to the sudden change. When Long Qianwu sensed that something was wrong, he had immediately informed him through telepathy. However, their enemies also reacted quickly. They pounced toward the blood gods at the same time and flustered them. The three-word battle armor master who charged towards Blood One smirked. A beam of light suddenly rose from behind him and was shot towards Zhong Huanyun. The mass of light had just appeared when it burst forth with a blazing golden glow. A dense metal aura wildly erupted. How could Zhong Huanyun not recognize it? This was a rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. The destructive power of this thing could turn a mountain into flat land. Moreover, there were many Blood God army soldiers on the battlefield right now. He did not hesitate. Zhong Huanyun's bright mirror domain was instantly opened up. It directly swallowed up that rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. At this very moment, this Blood God army's commanding officer had displayed his decisiveness. He did not even glance at the 9 blood gods. After devouring the fixed soul ammunition with his bright mirror domain, he quickly moved into the interior of Blood God's great array. He swung his arms strongly and the fixed soul ammunition directly flew towards the 7 abyssal kings who were charging upward. Zhong Huanyun knew full well that it was impossible for him to take care of both sides at once. He could only choose to release the fixed soul ammunition on one side. Although the enemies on the outside were powerful, they still had the entire Blood God army to fight against them. The enemies within were the most terrifying ones. If they allowed the abyssal kings led by Black Monarch to reach their world, that would be a truly catastrophic disaster. That was why after he collected the fixed soul ammunition with his domain, he had appeared within the array without hesitation. He used this rank 9 fixed soul ammunition to block Black Monarch and the other experts. A rank 9 fixed soul ammunition's attack was so terrifying that even a limit Doluo would be unwilling to face it head-on. Otherwise, how could the rank 12 fixed soul ammunition destroy the entire Shrek Academy? There was no doubt that Zhong Huanyun's choice was correct. If he was held up on the outside, the problem within would only worsen. However, the 9 blood gods had seemingly been affected at the same time. Long Qianwu was the quickest to react. He finally blocked the enemy he found out about before he reached Blood 8. He blocked his opponent with his blizzard-like attacks. However, this enemy of his was also formidable in his strength. A puff of grey smoke erupted from his opponent's body. Icy snow released from Long Qianwu's body was instantly dyed grey. Deafening shrieks and frightful wails soon surrounded Long Qianwu. Evil Soul Master! Long Qianwu howled furiously. He raised his right arm before himself. An ice-blue cone of ice rose from the ground. An intriguing scene appeared the instant the ice cone rose. One of the 9 heaven and earth spirits in the air fell on the ice cone, which made the ice cone suddenly enlarge. All the sinister aura was instantly frozen. Ice spirit guiding. Since the Blood God army was able to guard the abyssal plane for 6,000 years, their skills were naturally extraordinary. This was especially true for experts from families that guarded the abyssal passage for generations. All of them were powerful. Compared to ordinary soul masters, an evil soul master's powerfulness lied mainly in its wickedness. However, when they were faced with truly powerful soul masters, they mostly could not gain the upper hand. The evil soul master's expression changed as he quickly retreated. He was here to land an ambush, but he had no wish of dying here. When the ice spritz aura was infused, he only felt as if his own soul was about to be frozen. His evil soul master's powers were greatly weakened. Long Qianwu did not follow up with another attack. The ice cone shot out with lightning speed. It brought with it the ice spirit's aura and shot towards another evil soul master on the other side. His current priority was to rescue the 9 blood gods. The greatest advantage of these evil soul masters that appeared out of the blue was their element of surprise. One, they lost that, in this crowd of tens of thousands of blood god army warriors, the odds would not be in their favor. So what if they were three-word battle armor masters? These were no longer times where a titled Doluo could dominate a great army by himself. If powerful soul tools had their firepower focused, they would even give the most elite of the soul masters a headache. The reason for the attack of these 9 evil soul masters was to create an opportunity for the abyssal kings within the passage. A faint greenish figure, which was also the most agile evil soul master, had seemingly reached Blood 1 in just one breath. A green mask had appeared on his head without anyone noticing. Only his eyes, nose, and mouth were visible. His appearance was indiscernible. His pupils were dark green in color, and his battle armor was azure green with a faint trace of purple. This person was still some distance away, but a foul stench had already burst forth from his body. He made a circle with his arms and 2 scythe-like weapons slashed out. They resembled 2 azure green snakes that slithered towards Blood 1. Without a doubt, the true core of the Blood God's great array was Blood 1. Once Blood 1 was shaken, it would be impossible for the great array to be maintained. That was why this evil soul master had attacked with everything he had with his first strike. Blood 1 coldly looked at the 2 azure green masses of light. A cold gleam flickered in his eyes. He truly did not expect there to be a problem from the humans in a war that was directly related to the survival of the human race. These crazy evil soul masters had chosen to team up with the abyssal plane. It was no wonder that the abyssal plane was able to break the main passage and launch an unprecedented abyssal tide. Without a doubt, all of this was pre-planned. To think that the Holy Spirit cult dared to collude with the abyssal plane. This was simply pushing the entire Doluo continent onto a path of destruction. It was absurd to think that there were people willing to appease these evil beings, people who did not even care about the lives of mankind. The 2 azure green glows were reflected in Blood 1's eyes. He raised his left hand and an approximately 4-foot-long sword appeared in his hand. He slashed with the sword in his left hand with light movements while maintaining the Blood God's great array. It seemed like this slash of his held no firepower, nor was there any outflow of energy. However, the expression of the evil soul master who wore the green head mask changed greatly. This was because he clearly felt that when Blood 1 slashed with his sword, his entire person seemed to have vanished. As he vanished, he completely merged with his surroundings. Elements of every attribute had instantly become a part of him. The elements were all under his guidance. Isn't he maintaining the Blood God's great array? How could he still have such abilities? Moreover, his spiritual power. The 2 azure green snakes instantly disintegrated. An invisible sword's consciousness silently fell on that evil soul master's body. The evil soul master only had enough time to raise a scythe before himself to defend. The scythe was shattered the very next instant. The battle armor on his chest broke away and shattered in large pieces. He spattered his own face mask with a mouthful of fresh blood as he reeled backward. The Holy Spirit sect had already thought very highly of the Tang sect master, Doluo Hall's Hall master, and Heartless Doluo. They also knew that the amount of energy he needed to maintain this great array utilizing planar power was enormous. However, they had still underestimated him in the end. He surprisingly still had some energy to spare in the process of maintaining the great array. Moreover, with just one attack he had gravely wounded a 3-word battle master who had a hyper-Doluo's cultivation base and was in charge of the ambush. Once a person's cultivation base reached a certain rank, an evil soul master's advantage was non-existent. A trace of regret appeared on Blood 1's face. This evil soul master who ambushed him had a powerful cultivation base. He thought that he could kill his opponent with one slash, but now it seemed that it was not enough. Currently, the other blood gods were also ambushed. If it were under any normal circumstances, an ambush like this would have been fatal to them. They would be hard-pressed to free up their hands to fight their enemies. However, they were better off right now. The feedback from the life seed had replenished the life force they had exhausted while activating Blood God's great array. In addition to that, they even had some extra energy to deal with their enemies. Blood 2 and Blood 3 had successfully blocked the evil soul masters who attacked them. These evil soul masters were now faced with the attacks from the Blood God Army's experts. However, the few Blood Gods ranging from Blood 4 to Blood 9 did not have the same luck. Blood 8 was the luckiest of them all. The evil soul master who attacked her had been stopped by Long Qianwu at the first moment. Moreover, Blood 9's condition was the most precarious. The evil soul master who attacked him had a superior cultivation base than him. In truth, when the Holy Spirit cult planned their attack, their real aim was not to take down the heartless Deluo Cao Deji. For the other blood gods, their objective was to affect them if they could. If they could not be affected, then they would at least attract the blood god army's attention and create some disturbance. The true point they wanted to break through was Blood 9. The Holy Spirit cult's research on the blood god army had not just started recently. The fact that they were able to lie in wait here proved that they were waiting for this opportunity to arise. They had even researched the blood god's great array to a good extent. In Blood God Battalion, the one with the weakest cultivation base was undoubtedly Blood 9. The evil soul master who attacked Blood 9 had a cultivation base that was greater than the evil soul master who attacked Blood 1. He was determined to take down Blood 9 with his all-out attack. Blood God's great array must be maintained by 9 persons, and not every title Deluo could appear among these 9. They had to undergo many years of coordination and practice to successfully accomplish that. So if they could defeat Blood 9, the Blood God's great array would be destroyed all the same. The Holy Spirit cult had never thought about fighting the Blood God army with its own strength. What they wanted was to draw out the Abyssal Plane's energy and let the Abyssal Plane to fight with the Blood God army to death. This would initiate a great prolonged battle between the Abyssal Plane and the entire human realm. Regardless of who the final victor was, it would greatly affect humans and abyssal creatures alike. This was the outcome that the Holy Spirit wished to see the most. Every negative emotion and dead wraith were nutrients that they could take up. The evil soul master that appeared before Blood 9 was a lady with a black veil over her face. When she attacked, the Blood God army's uniform on her body had shattered and disappeared. Her battle armor was pitch black like ink with purple halo flowing within it. Her weapon was a sword that was completely purple-black in color. There was no outburst of energy, but there were 3 pairs of shadows in the shape of purple-black wings hovering behind her. If Yuan Yehue was here, she would definitely have recognized that the figure behind this lady was a fallen angel, and it was a high-ranking fallen angel to boot. 6 wings meant that it was of a title Deluo's rank. This evil soul master was not like any ordinary title Deluo. She instantly slashed 8 times at her surroundings with the shadow demon sword in her hands. Her 9 soul rings also manifested themselves. 6 blacks and 3 reds. The soul ring that was currently flickering was a black soul ring 5th in order. Her 8th slash flew across the air, and 8 light doors that were as pitch black as ink appeared around her. The doors blocked the sights of all Blood God Army's warriors. From these 8 doors, great 3-headed dogs more than 5 meters in length and 3 meters in height wildly charged out. Their 3 heads released ice, fire, and dark flames. Flames from the 3 elements lashed out at everything around them. Hell's Gates, Cerberus summoning. Yuan Yehue had the same soul skill. However, compared to this evil soul master, the difference in their strength was logically incomparable. When these 8 Hell's Gates appeared, 2 ram-like horns grew out of the lady's head. The long horns curved upward with their tips directed toward the skies. Her shadow demon sword shone brightly and she slashed towards Blood 9 with her sword without any techniques. Blood 9 only felt that he was supposed to be under the protection of the great army. However, he currently felt alone as he faced the evil soul master before him. The evil soul master's face was covered with a black veil, only her eyes were exposed. The surface of her black mask was adorned with faint purple patterns. It looked mysterious and gorgeous. Her eyes were also very special. They currently had a deep purple hue. They were as mesmerizing as the abyss. Even a single look into them gave the person a feeling of their soul being trapped. The sword instantly reached Blood 9. His expression changed. His cultivation base was the weakest among the group. It took him all he had to maintain the Blood God's great array. He did not have any energy to deal with the incoming attacks. Moreover, his attacker was much more powerful than him. At this very instant, countless thoughts flashed across Blood Nine's mind. He bit his tongue strongly and blood spurted out from his eyes. A layer of flare rose around him. Without any other choice left to him, he instantly ignited his life flame. Any soul master with cultivation bases of 5 rings and above had the ability to ignite their own life flame. One's life flame could instantly power up one's cultivation base. However, the fuel for one's life flame was one's life energy and potential. Once ignited, the soul master would quickly run out of life and eventually die. Blood 9 could clearly see the charge of the inner abyssal kings. If they could not hold their grounds in this round, it would be a catastrophic disaster for the Blood God army. That was why, regardless of the price they had to pay, he could not let the Blood God's great array be broken, even if he had to sacrifice his own life. Back when he was a preparatory Blood God, he already had such resolve. If there was the need, every Blood God army's warrior was willing to give up their life to guard the abyssal passage. That was why there was no sadness or pain on his face. Instead, there was a faint smile. This was his glory, the glory of being the former Blood 9. Blood 2 had just landed an attack on his evil soul master. Currently, he could not help but had his eyes reddened. However, as one of the cores of the Blood God's great array, he could not do anything right now. They were tied by blood. Even with Hell's Gates blocking his sight, he could clearly feel his son's life energy undergoing an unprecedented sublimation. He knew all too well what this meant. The sacred life flame circled around Blood 9 as he sighed softly. He raised his right arm and a spear materialized out of thin air. The spear was covered in a layer of light that resembled holy light as it struck the shadow demon sword. Amidst the crisp clang, the spear and Blood 9's body violently shook. At the same time, he could not help but display fear in his eyes. Even after he had ignited his life flame, he was unable to block the evil soul master's attacks. It was evident from this exchange just how powerful his opponent's cultivation base was. This evil soul master's cultivation base far surpassed his. They were both 3-word battle armor masters, but he had not expected the difference in their strength to be this huge. Blood 9 instantly acknowledged that the evil soul master who appeared before him had most probably possessed a cultivation base of rank 97 or above. A soul master at rank 95 was classified as a hyperdolor. There was a saying that said above rank 95, every further step was a high ladder. The difference between even a single rank corresponded to a huge gap in strength. Also, this evil soul master's martial soul was also one of the strongest of its kind. When it was a one-on-one battle even with his father, Blood 2's rank 97 cultivation base might not even be able to suppress this opponent. All thoughts flashed across his mind in an instant. Blood 9 opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. This mouthful of fresh blood combusted in the air and turned into a mass of golden red flare that fell onto his spear. His spear instantly burst forth with a brilliance that was difficult to describe. Even the evil soul master expressed hesitation on her face. Intense explosion sounds erupted around the Hell's Gates. Even though this evil soul master had extremely powerful cultivation base, Blood God army's attacks were extraordinary. Her Hell's Gates could not be maintained for a long time against them. Her shadow demon sword glowed with dark light. The horns on her head instantly turned into dark purple shadow demon swords. The instant they collided with the blooded spear, the space around them contorted. The 3-word battle armor on Blood 9's body shattered inch by inch. His battle armor erupted loudly and turned into a storm of metal which lashed out at the evil soul master. Almost all the pores on his body sprayed blood mist. This blood mist was added into his burning life flame, making it burn stronger. A strange look flashed across the evil soul master's purple eyes. Her attack should have been a sure kill, but because of her target's unexpected tenacity, her mission had become increasingly difficult. Her shadow demon sword had no choice but to return to her side to defend her. It turned into a dark purple light screen which blocked Blood 9's attack. At this moment, 3 of the 8 Hell's Gates seemed to have shattered. At the same time, a few unparalleled imposing auras charged toward the evil soul master. As expected of a blood god, Her ice-cold voice had no trace of emotions but had a peculiarly evil tone to it. The dark purple figure rose from the ground. Suddenly, a purple-black crack opened up in midair. When this person leaped, she strongly swung her shadow demon sword and the ninth soul ring on her body shone brightly. The skies darkened, and the other 8 evil soul masters immediately turned into streaks of purple light, instantly disappearing into the crack. After she took a deep look at Blood 9, her gaze also disappeared into the crack. Blood 9's focus had always been on her. He did not know why, but when their eyes locked at the final moment, he suddenly had a peculiar feeling. That pair of emotionless eyes was now deeply ingrained into his mind. However, he immediately forgot all about this. His life flame was already blazing. It could be said that he was in his most powerful condition right now. However, this life flame could not be stopped. Mouthfuls of fresh blood were spat out by Blood 9. His life flame burned brighter and brighter. He infused his soul power into the blood god's great array, making it even more stable. After Blood 4, every blood god had suffered some form of damage. However, they were fortunate enough to have support from the life seed. At least no one had died during the ambush of the evil soul masters. While Blood God's great array was shaken, it did not break down in the end. However, Blood 9's ignited life flame could not be put out now. Since his life flame had already burned to this extent, it would have to burn out completely. It would only die out after his body and even his soul was completely burned. 2 rows of tears flowed down Blood 2's cheeks. This was his only son. It did not matter how strict he was to him during normal times. As a father, he was looking at his son losing his life in front of him and was powerless to do anything. The anguish he was feeling was unimaginable. Blood 2's heart was in a complete breakdown. However, what he saw was his son's blood-spitting smile. Blood 9 seemed to be telling him, "Father, I didn't give you any shame. I didn't put any shame on our blood god battalion." However, all this was unimportant to Blood 2. His only wish right now was for his son to continue living. The other blood god's auras became unstable at the moment. This was especially true for Blood 8, who stood closest to Blood 9. Currently, her eyes were filled with tears. She knew that Blood 9 had liked her all this while and had always pursued her. However, her proud self kept telling him that she would give him a chance when he becomes stronger than her. Blood 9 had been working hard. Blood 8, unwilling to lose, was also moving forward. In the end, he could not surpass her cultivation base. However, when she saw the glow of Blood 9's life burning at its brightest and inching closer towards dying out, Blood 8's heart was filled with endless regret. She regretted having been proud and not agreeing to him sooner. Blood 9's gaze shifted from his father to Blood 8. Although he kept spitting blood, his smile grew warmer and warmer. There was no longer any trace of his former pride. What was left was an intense but gentle gaze. His remaining hope was to deeply engrave the silhouette before him in his mind during his final moments. He wanted to wish her well with his final brilliance. Blood God's great array was experiencing a great change while a great battle of life and death had already begun inside the array. Intense explosion sounds accompanied a terrifying metal storm as it erupted and wreaked havoc inside the abyssal passage. Countless abyssal creatures were torn to shreds. The rank 9 fixed soul ammunition's destructive power was truly terrifying. It even surpassed the abyssal creatures' knowledge. Although they had also faced these super weapons of the humans 6,000 years ago, the humans' allied army did not use them widely for fear of collateral damage. However, there was no possibility of collateral damage in the abyssal passage. That was why when the rank 9 fixed soul ammunition was flung by the bright Miradolu or Zhong Huanyun, it detonated and had quickly stopped the 7 charging abyssal kings in their tracks. Black Monarch spread the wings behind her, which turned into a curtain of darkness. She protected the other 6 abyssal kings behind her. Her black devour demon fog was completely let loose as it collided with the wild and wanton metal storm. In order to protect the other 6 abyssal kings, she had no choice but to withstand the rank 9 fixed soul ammunition's explosion force head-on. Even with Black Monarch's cultivation base under the wild energy's impact, her aura could not help but be greatly lowered as well. Even the black devour demon fog could not absorb such explosive energy. With this cooldown period, Zhong Huanyan had met up with Tang Wulin. Zhong Huanyan lowered his voice and anxiously said, "You take care of the center and don't worry about anything else. I'll deal with other matters." As he said this, Zhong Huanyan's seventh soul ring shone brightly. The bright mirror behind him enlarged instantly. It turned into a giant mirror with a diameter of more than 100 meters in the blink of an eye. Zhong Huanyan's own body seemed to dissolve into it. Bright mirror avatar. Tang Wulin drew a deep breath and shouted with a deep voice, "Damask, guys, help me." With his shout, beams of light separated from his body. They were the various plant-type soul beasts that had followed him since Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes. With Damask Tulip as their leader, the others were Blazing Apricot Cabbage Xiaohua, Eight-Pointed Frozen Grass Xiaobing, Black Jade Divine Bamboo Momo, Earthworm Pumpkin Gua Gua, and Piercing Gaze Du Xiao Qiu. The 6 great plant-type soul beasts' cultivation bases were above 100,000 years since a long time ago. They had also gained intelligence. Ever since they followed Tang Wulin, they had been experiencing the life seed's aura and were being nurtured within Tang Wulin's sea of spirit. Although these 6 great plant-type soul beasts seldom contacted Tang Wulin, they were genuinely thankful for the choice they made back then. In the beginning, their initial objective of following Tang Wulin to leave Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes was so that they could absorb more of the life seed's aura. They intended to stabilize their cultivation base's foundations that they had formed in Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes and wait for an opportunity to achieve another breakthrough. However, they quickly realized that the benefit they gained from being inside Tang Wulin's body was not the life seed alone. Tang Wulin's bloodline aura's density had surpassed what they knew as possible. They noticed with shock that every time Tang Wulin's cultivation base improved, especially after the formation of his dragon core, the dense blood essence power washed over their bodies and the nutrients it gave them were much denser than what they received in Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes. These were 2 different energies. The energy within Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes was the highest quality of heaven and earth spirits. The energy within Tang Wulin's body was the densest life force. The Golden Dragon King bloodline aura's influence on them at this stage was much stronger than the Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes. This was because, in a certain sense, they were no longer pure soul beasts. With their cultivation bases that exceeded 100,000 years, they could turn into humans. Hence, they had to mimic a human's bloodline and the human body's constitution. With their humanoid bodies, they had to learn to utilize their heaven and earth power. Even if they chose to not become human, this was a process that they had to go through. On the other hand, the most difficult part of their cultivation was to imitate bloodline aura. Tang Wulin's thick bloodline aura poured into their bodies and nourished their bodies such that they benefited greatly without them noticing, and the human form of their bodies was stabilized preliminary. Of course, they were not just extracting energy for their own. At the same time, they were expending energy quietly as well. Tang Wulin's spiritual power was elevated swiftly, and sensing the presence of all sorts of heaven and earth spirits elements became much easier for him. This was directly related to the numerous almighty plant-type soul beasts in him. They had completely opened up their affinity with elements for Tang Wulin, so his spiritual power could easily detect the source of these elements. As a result, he was enhanced, and naturally the speed of his spiritual power advancement was increased on a large scale. At the same time, they were all beings with an exceedingly pure life force, so they could continuously fuse their life force into Tang Wulin's body and silently nourish it. It could be said that after their filtration, life seed's aura was even more fitting for Tang Wulin's absorption. On the other hand, everything happened under the silent influence of nature. Although Tang Wulin had not consumed heaven and earth treasures when he was at Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes back, he benefited the most throughout this period of time, which resulted in him continuously making breakthroughs over such a short amount of time without any fear of disturbance. At this moment, all 6 great plant-type 100,000-year soul beasts appeared simultaneously. Compared to the beginning, their auras were already completely different. Every one of them was surrounded by a domain that was formed based on their individual attribute. The damask tulip stood right in front of Tang Wulin with faint pink radiance emitted from its body. His appearance immediately refreshed the surrounding air that was originally a little stale. Even Zhong Huanyan felt like his spirit was lifted upon smelling the scent emitted from his body. Damask Tulip's full name was supposed to be known as Fragrance Damask Immortal. He was the king of immortal grass, so he should be of a rank higher than Tang Wulin's Blue-Silver Emperor. In Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes he was capable of making all the other immortal grasses acknowledge allegiance to himself, so one could only imagine his status. Despite its lack of immediate fighting abilities, its auxiliary ability was something that any other immortal grass could not replicate. Blazing Apricot Cabbage stood on the left front side of Tang Wulin. Its fire element bloomed while its blazing red radiance crept along the ground. Eight-pointed frozen grass stood on the right front of Tang Wulin. Its blue radiance spread out with bitter coldness that pierced through one's bones. It was obviously on the exact opposite side of the attribute of blazing apricot cabbage, yet it felt like the pair were complementing one another. They appeared to be opposing one another in Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes, but in reality, they had already completed the harmony of yin-yang through the Ice-Fire Polarized Eyes way earlier. Their togetherness would not result in the weakening of either, but on the contrary, both of them would enhance one another on a large scale. Earthworm Pumpkin and Black Jade Divine Bamboo stood on the left and right back of Tang Wulin. Both of them emitted yellow and green domain radiances separately, while Piercing Gaze Dew stood right behind Tang Wulin with faint white radiance slowly radiating out from its body. The 6 great immortal grasses awaited the arrival of their enemy in battle array. Zhong Huanyun, who had already ventured deep into the domain and unleashed his bright mirror avatar, could not help staring in bewilderment as the scene unfolded before his eyes. His valuation of Tang Wulin grew higher and higher after examining his conscience, and Tang Wulin had even exceeded his original imagination. He reached the conclusion that his valuation was still not enough, as Tang Wulin was even far more powerful than he had imagined. What are those? They don't feel like humans, but they can transform into a human form. It's enough to prove their status. Those are the real 100,000-year soul beasts. It's even difficult to encounter a 100,000-year soul beast on today's Dolor continent due to the endangered species of soul beasts, let alone 6 of them. Soul rings arose from underneath Tang Wulin's feet. Those 6 soul rings were neatly arranged in the colors of black, 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 green gold and orange gold. Yes, even without Tang Wulin's notice, his former soul rings had already elevated to 10,000-year rank and were now black. It had already been a long time since his last visit to the Spirit Ascension platform, but his soul rings had still advanced under the silent influence of environment. Moreover, it was as if he suddenly made some new breakthroughs earlier, which should be the retroaction produced after the life seed absorbed the plain seed. A faint smile emerged on Tang Wulin's face. His eyes were giving out a faintly discernible radiance, while the golden dragon spear in his hand glowed brightly as he pointed it downward. The damask tulip raised his head and looked towards the blood god's great array in the sky. His face suddenly cracked into a playful smile as he raised his hands and made a hugging gesture to the thin air. At once, the 9-colored radiance emitted from blood god's great array fluttered gently once before transforming into a tornado-like form that floated down under its guidance. Was that spirit borrowing? Let alone Zhong Huanyun, even the true core person of the blood god's great array, Blood One was startled upon witnessing the scene. Even as the conductors of Blood God's great array, there was only Blood One capable of using the ability of spirit borrowing amongst the 9 blood gods. Yet, Tang Wulin's spirit soul-like creature was capable of doing so at present. A large flower naturally bloomed behind Tang Wulin back. It was precisely the real form of Fragrance Damask Immortal's body. Devour Heaven and Earth was launched. There was utterly no need for Tang Wulin to exercise control. The damask tulip had directly completed the process of unleashing for him. In a split second, heaven and earth spirits derived from planar power surged toward Tang Wulin like a swarm of bees and at once filled his body to the brink. Tang Wulin could only feel as if he had already transformed into a part of the elements. Not only that, a gush of suction force radiated from the rest of the 5 directions and diffused outward with his body as the center point. The 6 great immortal grasses exerted strength at the same time while their domains glowed brightly. Their aura increased exponentially in a moment. Black Monarch had just managed the huge explosion caused by the rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. Her figure was already soaring upward as she stretched out a finger aiming toward Tang Wulin. Behind her, the rest of the 6 abyssal kings had all begun to unleash their abilities as well. They had only one target, and that was precisely Tang Wulin. Yet, it was at this moment that Black Monarch saw Tang Wulin's eyes. It was a pair of eyes shimmering with 9-colored radiance, and even the golden scales that covered his set of 2-word battle armor were tinted with a layer of 9-colored light. Black Monarch could only feel as if something had crashed into the depth of her soul. Without her noticing, her aura halted for a moment. Soon after that, she watched Tang Wulin's spear descending from the sky. Golden Dragon Spear did not roar this time, but it was emitting the purest form of radiance. The spear's radiance was pointed towards Black Monarch. The 6 great immortal grasses that surrounded Tang Wulin were all blooming with dazzling radiance from their bodies. All at once, the radiance unleashed from their combined effort had even managed to shelter the bright mirror Doluor behind their back. Tang Wulin was a 2-word battle armor master with 6-ringed cultivation base. At this exact moment, he managed to rely on the amplification from Blood God's great array and the support from 6 great immortal grasses and life seed to burst forth with an unprecedented and terrifying fighting ability. Boom! Black Devour Demon Fog and 9-colored radiance exploded almost simultaneously. 2 layers of exceedingly terrifying energy burst forth from the abyssal passage. At this very moment, both parties were having a completely different sensation. Black Monarch first felt the pressure that came from the plane. She could feel the plane's pressure toward herself growing stronger as she approached the passage's exit. This was the downside of fighting a battle in the opponent's field. On the other hand, Tang Wulin's spear earlier was not the same as any spear technique he had unleashed in the past. It was no longer fluctuation with his incomparably thick blood essence, but with overlapped planes. During that one split second, Black Monarch even had a misconception that Tang Wulin was already the core of Doluor plane and the spear was pierced out with the representation of it. The ruthless Black Monarch felt as if the weight of Mountain Taishan was on herself as she was forcefully pinned down towards the depth of the abyssal passage. The 6 abyssal kings joining her as they ascended into the air felt the same suffocating pressure. They simultaneously retreated. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.